Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We have a presentation with Kelly Malcolm, CEO of Borealis. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. I don't believe Kelly's going to actually work off a presentation today, so this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's presentation on the website. There will be Q&A, so feel free to put your questions in the comments box, and we'll get to those after Kelly does a bit of an overview of the recently announced Gold Bull transaction. And with that all out of the way, I'd like to introduce Kelly. Congrats.
Thank you, Deb. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here for our second webinar with you guys on Borealis, and great news, really exciting stuff for the company that we're looking to talk about. I am going to share some slides, so we will have something to speak to as well.
Okay, awesome. Do you want to kick it off with a bit of an overview of the transaction?
Yeah, for sure. So this is largely going to be focused on the transaction that we just announced on Tuesday, an acquisition takeover of Gold Bull Resources Corp. Gold Bull has two assets in Nevada, one of which is really advanced with really, really spectacular and compelling economics that really got me intrigued the first time I went. I looked at the PEA, done a number of site visits, and that culminated in the announcement on Tuesday. So we're going to walk through the transaction, walk through the Sandman project and the upside potential that we see, and also how we think it complements the Borealis story. So with that, we can take a look at the slideshow here and give the audience a taste of what we're excited about. So just as a backdrop, and I know we've presented this story to your audience here at Deb and Magda, but Borealis owns a fully permitted mine in Nevada called the Borealis Mine. Got a really strong board of directors, great shareholders, newly listed as of August 7th. And this is our first corporate acquisition that we've announced or that we're working on. So really, really excited about it as it sort of sets the path of growth that the company's working on going forwards. So this will be really, really forward-looking. This transaction is not closed. It still requires a shareholder vote amongst other approvals. So please be mindful of that. There is a preliminary economic assessment available on CDR Plus or on Gold Bull's website. You can see that at the bottom of this forward-looking statement. So please take a look at that and also look at their website as well for additional information. So with this Gold Bull acquisition, Borealis goes from a single asset company to a 3-asset company, all Nevada focused, all gold focused. And I think it really adds a lot of meat to the story. So over on the right here, you can see the pipeline of growth that we now have, of course, pending closing this transaction. But with Borealis, we've got a production-ready mine site, fully permitted, fully built, very little capital required to get that up and running. Historical and non-compliant 1.8 million ounce measured indicated resource at Borealis, with around $60 million of US replacement infrastructure, with most importantly, a functional ADR facility where we can pour doré bars. Next up, Gold Bull Sandman project, 490,000 ounces of resource base, including 433,000 ounces in the indicated category, with a really, really positive PEA that we'll look at in a moment. And really interestingly, this project was owned by Newmont in the past, and it's got a very, very comprehensive plan of operations covering the entirety of the property, which we'll talk about in a bit, but will make permitting much easier and also allows us to drill basically anywhere on the property anytime we'd like within that plan of operations. And then for something further down the line, on a pure exploration basis, project is the Big Balds project, which is 10 kilometers west of Kinross's Bald Mountain. Some really nice geophysical anomalies, great geochem anomalies. So we've got this kind of tiered asset group now with production ready, permit ready, and drill ready in Borealis, Sandman, and Big Balds, respectively. So looking at the actual acquisition and its highlights. So as mentioned, adding 2 Nevada assets at a cost of around, including the inferred ounces, at about $13.5 per ounce, with relatively near-term production profile or potential. Economics are spectacular. We'll look at that in a moment. We think there's real upside, particularly at the Sandman deposit. Our team has modeled up the resources that are present and or that were presented in the 2021 resource report. We see immediate upside potential and also see some optimization to be done with the PEA that was done in 2023. And in terms of synergies with Borealis, the thing that caught my eye when I first looked at the technical report for this project was that they called for, in that PEA, using an external ADR facility to pour doré bars, which is the reason that the capex is much lower than relatively comparable projects in and around the state. Using our ADR facility, we can realize that very low capex as we look to advance the project. So again, this is very forward-looking. This is post-transaction and is subject to change. Post-deal, we'll roughly have 97 million shares out, with about 20 million warrants between Borealis and Gold Bull warrants. Market cap post-transaction at today's share price will be about $65 million Canadian. In terms of the makeup of the share structure, insiders of Borealis will hold about 12%. Rob McEwen will be about 14%. Institutions about 30 or 27. Borealis retail about 33%, and then existing Gold Bull holders about 14% of the combined entity. The transaction that we announced was an all-stock deal at valued at 60 cents per Gold Bull share, which something I think is quite important when you're doing these types of transactions is you want both sides to be happy, and I think that we presented a really compelling premium to Gold Bull shareholders. Prior to the transaction being announced, their last trade was at 24.5 cents. So this represents well above 100% premium for Gold Bull holders. Roughly values the transaction at about $8.9 million Canadian, or as mentioned, about $13.5 per ounce in the ground. So I think it's a win-win for both parties, and based on the calls that I've had since announcing, there's a lot of positive feedback. So in terms of the Sandman asset, near-term production potential, as mentioned, the 2023 PEA shows a 35 to 40,000 ounce per annum production profile. As mentioned, the existing plan of operations covering the entire site allows us to go drill. There's water monitoring wells all over the place. And as part of that comprehensive plan of operations, there was a large biological, archaeological, and geochemical study essentially done covering the project, which should help lower permit timelines once we decide to go ahead and advance this into a mine. We'll talk about the PEA in a moment. The resource base here is quite robust. You're looking at, in terms of indicated ounces in oxide, a really strong grade of 0.63 grams per ton, which is well above the average grade mined in Nevada in a heap leaching environment of 265,000 ounces. In the inferred on the oxide front, another 35,000 ounces at 0.46, which is actually in line with the average in mine in Nevada. And then on the unoxidized portion, another 167,000 ounces indicated, another 25,000 ounces inferred. Interestingly, previous metallurgy work done by Newmont as well as by Gold Bull indicates that there is not refractory mineralization present. Of course, that's something that we're looking to validate with our first bit of work that we do on the project, but that could be really interesting because potentially this unoxidized ore could be treated on a heap leach pad. So the PEA itself was done, as mentioned, in 2023, so post-COVID, where most of the inflation really became rampant. So relatively modern and recent numbers went into this economic study. And this was done at US $1,800 per ounce. As we all know, we're trading about $2,700 US today. And we'll talk about what that means to this asset in a moment. But really, really strong NPV. So $121 million US NPV at a reasonable discount rate of 6% post-tax, 81% IRR, again, post-tax, low payback period of 1.3 years. And this is on a very, very inexpensive $31.5 million US initial capital expenditure. So very, very low capex, high IRR, strong NPV, and that delivers a 9-year mine life showing 35 to 40,000 ounces of gold per annum at a low all-in sustaining cost of $1,337 per ounce. Sandman is in a mining town. This is right outside of Winnemucca, Nevada. These are all relatively world-class gold mines that are highlighted here, with the closest being the Sleeper Mine just to the north. But there's some very large and long life assets in and around the area. In terms of what the gold price does to this project, this was really, really compelling to me. So what we're looking at here is a sensitivity study that was done as part of the 2023 PEA. So as mentioned, the gold price for the economic study was done at $1,800 US. And that presented $121 million NPV and roughly 81% internal rate of return. When you look at current gold pricing, let's use 26, even though we're almost closer to 28, your NPV jumps up to $323 million US, and your IRR is a staggering 172%, which results in significantly shorter payback periods and a significantly higher annual free cash flow generation. So this asset, as the PEA presented, again at $1,800 gold, on average does about $22 million US per annum in free cash flow. As you can imagine, adding roughly $1,000 per ounce to that base case scenario will result in significantly higher free cash flows, again, in a very forward-looking statement. And it's a really linear and sharp and abrupt curve here. So as gold, we're all gold bulls here, no pun intended, or pun intended actually. As gold hopefully continues its rise upwards, these numbers only become more and more impressive. And in terms of upside here and potential and what we see outside of just what was in that economic study, there are some really, really stellar historical hits. What's shown on the bottom here are just the results from the 2022 drill program. So you see some really nice widths of strong grades of gold, 144 meters of 1.7, 83 meters of 1.5, 51 of 1.1, 47 of 1.5. But there's also some really intriguing high-grade hits that I think deserve a much larger magnifying glass on and a much more detailed look and a lot more drilling. But you see numbers like 13 meters of nearly 20 grams per ton gold. And that's really intriguing, particularly owing to the fact that just north of Sandman is the Sleeper Mine. And the Sleeper Mine, for anyone that wants to look it up, is a famous, very, very high-grade, gold-rich, low-sulfidation gold system that delivered very high-grade gold over quite a long mine life in a very consistent manner. So the team here, both Cherie and Cherie's the CEO, and Reg, the exploration manager, are excellent geologists and have generated a number of really interesting targets that have potential for sleeper-style gold discoveries. In fact, Reg published recently some papers on her exploration techniques to identify those. So there's a lot of upside potential in the regional sense, and also there's some pretty, I think, some pretty easy pickings around the existing deposits that with some drilling we think we can quite easily expand the known resources. And only one of these feeder systems has been identified, which is which results in some of these high-grade golds here. So lots of potential here. And then it's not on this slide, but the other asset that's not really mentioned nor really talked about is the Big Balds project, BADLS. It's right beside the Bald Mountain Mine owned by Kinross. And it's a really interesting asset. The Bald Mountain project is essentially an intrusive hosted gold system with significant copper credits, although they're not getting credit for those copper credits. And it's the belief of the Gold Bull team, and certainly something that we're looking into, that there's a potential for a larger porphyry type system present on that asset. There's some really great geophysical and geochemical targets that we hope to be able to test in the near term. And with that, I think we'll leave it nice and short and sweet, and we'll open up the floor to any questions that may be present.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. So just to start off, can you tell us what permits or permit amendments would be required to start mining at Sandman?
Sure. So essentially, we've got a plan of operations for exploration. We need a mining plan of operations. The Winnemucca area is kind of a checkerboard, Magda, of BLM and private lands, for those that are familiar with the land packages in and around that area. So we'll need to do basically a federal permit for mining. There are some water rights present or granted to us already on the project, but really it's essentially a full permitting process to get the mine up and running. Got
it. Thank you. So can you walk us through what the next steps technically would be from, assuming once the acquisition closes, can you walk us through like what would happen? For sure. On the Borealis side. Thank you.
Yeah, so our plan at least is to bring a drill rig in almost as quickly as we can and do a combination of confirmatory drilling and expansionary, but with the main purpose of getting some large drill samples for metallurgy testing. So we'll do a combination. We'll of course get the grades, validate some of the historical numbers, work to grow the deposit, but the main point of that will be modern metallurgical testing that we can then use in a feasibility study. So drilling for met work, that will then be applied to a feasibility study. We're going to bypass the pre-feas altogether, owing to the strength of the economics presented in the PEA. And then basically, provided we're happy with the metallurgical results, concurrently with the feasibility study, we'll work to permit. So timelines are a hard thing to guide, but if all goes relatively well, you're looking at call it 18 to 36 month type period to get that done, Magda, and get this up into production.
Got it. Thank you, Kelly. And then at the Borealis mine, would there be any permit amendments, any investments needed to process the Sandman material?
No, not at all. So before we bought the asset, before we bought Borealis, it was held by Waterton, who is a private equity firm that owned a number of different assets throughout Nevada. They were toll treating other mines in and around the area, particularly the Ruby Hill mine. So this thing is set up so that you can virtually just take external mineralization, slot it into the system, and immediately start stripping it. So it's a no capital requirement to get that done.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you. And what would it look like? So how would the loaded carbon be transported, and how far apart are the two projects?
Great questions. So what, and that's one that I've got a lot over the last few days. So loaded carbon. So let's take a step back to the ore. So we talked about the grade being about 0.63 grams per ton in oxide here. By the time it gets into the carbon columns, and for those of you that are listening that are new to heap leaching, basically you're taking your ore, you crush it, put it onto a pad, and then you sprinkle cyanide and water solution through that ore. And then that solution, once it picks up the gold out of the rock, it goes through carbon columns, which act like a Brita filter and extract the gold out of that solution. By the time the gold is considered to be, or the carbon is considered to be loaded, it's in the order of 50, 60, 80 ounces per ton. So transport costs are largely irrelevant, Magda, but it's about 220 miles from the front gate of Borealis to what would be the front gate of Sandman. But really the constraint in terms of distance is more management than it is the transport cost itself. We want the assets to be close enough that management can go from one site to the other within a day. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. So now we have an audience question. Do you think that you will have more appetite for projects in Nevada?
Hello, Ernst. Absolutely, we will. So we've said this from the beginning that part of our strategy is looking for accretive assets that fit into our model, and that model, as previously stated, is high margin ounces that are kind of manageable in terms of size and scope, and financeable. And this one fits perfectly into that criteria with a $31 million initial capex. Really simple operation. It's something that a smaller company can handle, I think, quite well and quite easily. So other assets like that, absolutely, we will be looking for going forward.
Got it. Thank you. And would you plan any exploration at Sandman in 2025?
Possibly. We're going to be doing. We've got some prioritizing to do. So we intend to do a pretty significant regional campaign at Borealis, and now it's a matter of where do we focus our time and attention. We do have a full-time geological staff with the company Borealis, and their attention is now going to be also focused on Sandman. We'll probably look to add to that team as well with the growing asset base. We probably could use some additional brain power and eyeballs. So undetermined right now when we'll start that exploration campaign, but we do absolutely hope to do some regional work at Sandman.
Okay, thank you. And just last question from me before I hand it over to Deborah. Big Balds, where is that located relative to Borealis Mine on Sandman?
It's in Elko. It's on the, I don't know if I can share the slideshow again. Oh, there we go. So it's on this slide here. You can see the triangle of assets. So Big Balds, so Elko, Nevada is just up here. Big Balds is down to the south of Elko. You can see it on this map as well. So Bald Mountain is over here. That's owned by Kinross, and it's just to the west of Bald Mountain. So again, it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive from Borealis, but quite interesting.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Kelly, switching gears back to the Borealis mine, can you remind us what the current focus of work is at the site?
Sure. We're busy at work. We've got a drill rig spinning at the moment, looking to grow our existing oxide zones. It's working on the west in an area called the Cerro Duro area at the moment. We're prepping to start crushing our large stockpile. So we're doing some repairs on site. Right now we're doing some liner repairs in one of our ponds, and we're doing some pump repairs. So basically prepping everything to get into production, which we hope, and again, very forward-looking, will happen within Q1 of 2025. And that's production from the stockpile, not necessarily production from the mine itself. Working on future permitting for additional areas of the property that aren't within the mine plan. So we're very busy at Borealis itself, and Sandman will only add to that. So probably will add to the team as well going forward.
Do you have any drilling planned at site?
We are drilling as we speak, Deb, but we will continue drilling. We're looking to expand some of the zones, and we hope to do our first real regional exploration campaign beginning in the summer of 2025.
Any specific targets you're focused on?
Yeah, right now we're over to the west on the Cerro Duro area. There's some really interesting areas that I think we can easily expand the existing mineralization near a historic pit called the Northeast Ridge. And then there's a few really intriguing areas that we've been working on basically all summer and into coming into winter now. We've had a geologist out mapping and sampling and prospecting for a few months on an area to the southwest of the property that we're calling Middle Earth. We've also recently staked some additional ground that we're interested in. So there's we're certainly not short nor shy on targets and growth potential.
When do you expect the transaction to close?
So the major step, of course, there's a bunch of legal paperwork to do and exchange approvals and all that stuff. But the thing that typically holds these things back or slows them down is the shareholder vote. So on the Gold Bull side, they have to have their shareholders approve the transaction. As I understand, they're almost complete. They're almost done. They're circular, which will be sent out at some point soon. They're anticipating that shareholder vote can be late January or early February, which would put a potential close of around end of February into March, potentially.
And what amount of cash do you have on hand currently?
So our most recently filed financials, which we filed like 2-3 weeks ago, showed $2.5 million US in unrestricted cash, about the same 2.2, I think, in restricted cash. And we are revenue generating, so we do pour gold and have cash coming in as well. So that's about as much as I can say, unfortunately, owing to exchange restrictions on the forward-looking side of things. But revenue coming in, so we're in an interesting environment where we can actually just generate cash as needed and minimize dilution in comparison to many other TSXV mining issuers.
Got another audience question for you, Kelly. Do you believe by the time permits are granted at Sandman, cash flow from the Borealis mine will fund the Sandman CapEx?
Hello, Peter. I hope so, but again, that's super forward-looking. Even if it doesn't fund the entirety, I certainly hope that we'd be able to fund some of it. That would be great. Obviously, minimizing dilution is the name of the game, and the closer you get to free cash flow, the less that you're diluting shareholders. I'm a huge shareholder of this company, and I promise you I don't want to dilute myself down, so we'll look to do that as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Don't see any other audience questions, but I've got one final one. If anyone else has questions, feel free to enter them now. So Kelly, just looking at, there's one that came in. Can you give any guidance on the 2025 production profile based on the existing stockpile?
Yeah, super forward-looking. I can't really speak to reserves, unfortunately, Peter, but what I can do is tell you that we've got a 330,000 ton stockpile with a grade of roughly 0.5 gram. So that would be, and this used to be in our inventory and our financials, so I'm comfortable saying that. And you probably get about 70 to 75% recovery from that. So you're looking at 3,500 to 4,000 recovered ounces at quite a low cost. So we should do quite well on that. And then in terms of mining, unfortunately, I can't give any guidance on the actual blasting and crushing side of things. But from the stockpile, those are our numbers. So several thousand contained ounces that should be recovered at a relatively low cost. And that'll be about a 3-month exercise to crush all that material.
And last one for me, Kelly, looking at the next couple months, can you talk a bit about news flow and what investors can expect to see?
Sure. So fingers crossed, transaction closing in the next few months. That's one that's really important for me. Drill results, of course, as we get assays in from this oxide program. And one of the important ones, as Peter asked about, the stockpile crushing really is the first baby step that brings us towards a consistent production profile. So that's something that I'm really excited about. So initiation or even signing of initiation of that stockpile crushing, I think, is quite exciting as well.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions. Was there anything you wanted to cover in the session that we didn't get to, Kelly?
No, this was great. Anyone that wants more info on board, especially if coming from the Gold Bull side, hope to welcome you to the journey. But also feel free to check out our previous webinar. There's so much information on Borealis on YouTube. We're all over social media. Check out our website, and thanks everyone for your time.
Yeah, if anyone has any further questions or would like a one-on-one, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to help you with that. And Kelly, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank